Hello everyone and welcome to the Good Old Gamer. So we got some really interesting news coming out this week. So apparently Nvidia might actually start producing their graphics cards over at Intel. Also, Nvidia comes out saying that people are now spending $300 more per GPU upgrade. That's absolutely insane. We have Zen 4 CPUs coming in at 170 watts for the flagship parts. That's absolutely crazy. So we got all of that FSR news and a bunch of other things going on this week. So let's go ahead and just jump right on in. All right, so this article comes from TechSpot. We have Nvidia happy to let Intel produce its future GPUs. Intel has known our secrets for years. So that's actually one of the big things a lot of us would think. It's like, why would they want to produce on one of their competitors? Well, apparently, maybe they already know everything. So let's just jump into the article here and take a look at some of this. This came from Jensen Huang himself from a Q&A session yesterday over at Tom's Hardware. So when Jensen was asked about using Intel's Foundry Services, our IFS initiative, we are very open-minded to considering Intel, and I'm delighted by the efforts that they are making. Continuing to quote, our strategy is to expand our supply base with diversity and redundancy at every single layer. Wish they had that this time around now, didn't they? At the chip layer, at the substrate layer, at the system layer, at every single layer. We've diversified the number of nodes, we've diversified the number of foundries, and Intel is an excellent partner of ours. They're interested in us using their foundries, and we're very interested in exploring it. So from Intel CEO Pat Gelsinger, he told Reuters that the company is thrilled for their Nvidia interest in using their foundry capabilities. Of course they would. That's many, many billions of dollars there. Now, as for trade secrets and things like that, basically the competitive nature and losing their secrets, Huang said he isn't worried. He says both Intel and AMD have known Nvidia's secrets for years. Well, that's kind of interesting. So yeah, everybody knows what everybody's doing. Cool. All right. Well, now we have confirmation from one of the big three about that. And there are plenty of legal ways of keeping behavior on the level, such as NDAs. We share roadmaps, of course, under confidentiality, and a very selective channel of communications. The industry has just learned how to work this way. So I found that a bit interesting that they just straight up said, yeah, we all kind of know what everybody's doing, but due to patents and NDAs and all this other stuff, it just works, I guess. So, you know, there's Jensen once again. He should have just said that. It just works. So a lot of the commenters actually on that article, I always read the comments on these to kind of gauge community sentiment to these things. The sentiment is, this is Intel and Nvidia teaming up to knock out AMD. I found that very hilarious. I'm like, well, Nvidia doesn't even view AMD as a threat, and Intel does on the CPU side, but they're not even in the GPU market yet, so they don't really probably have too much of an opinion yet as to that. So I don't see it as that. Realistically, we've kind of seen supply shortages this year or over the past couple of years. We've seen how fragile all of this is. Personally, I just think that Nvidia recognizes that at any time, China could just take over Taiwan, null and void all of their contracts, and renegotiate the whole thing from the ground up and steal the $10 billion that Nvidia's already given them for N5. Guess what? If China goes in there and takes it over, there's really nothing Nvidia can do. It's not like they're going to fight a war with China. So the smart move is to have plan B, just like Jensen said, or plan C or D or whatever. Just make sure you have a backup plan. We know Intel has fab capabilities spread all across the world. So if one part of the world destabilizes, has issues, Intel is still going to be producing product, and honestly, they're probably the best foundry on the planet to be doing business with because of that. There's a lot of issues going on in the world right now. Don't know if you guys have seen a newspaper or watched a news channel or anything. Every day it's doom, 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 and problem, problem, problem. Granted, they overblow a lot of it, but still, there are a lot of very interesting things going on. I'm just going to keep this as PC friendly as possible on this one. But regardless, from Nvidia, they're very pragmatic and they're going to want to have that security. So in the future, if they can get good manufacturing process from Intel, they know that no matter what happens, unless the whole world goes up in flames, they're likely going to still be able to make their chips. So that's all I really think it is. And I actually think that this is a very smart move from Nvidia. Actually, it would make a lot of sense for AMD to do the same thing. And honestly, just about any other manufacturer at TSMC, they should be looking at Intel as at least as a plan B if necessary. Now, I found this article immediately after the other one. Nvidia. People are paying $300 more when upgrading to RTX cards. 71% of gamers still using GTX series. So both of these are very, very interesting. We're going to unpack each one individually, as I think this number being so high is likely due to the fact that this number is so high. So they're tied together, but they're both two separate things. So where these quotes come from, this is from the Investors Day yesterday. I guess this would be 2 days ago now. I think this is a couple days old, this article. To PC Mag, this is Nvidia SVP Jeff Fisher. He said, looking into the millions of desktop GeForce gamers who we know have upgraded their GPUs to a 30 series, they are buying up, meaning that they're spending more money. The GPU is offering more value than ever. Based on our data, they're spending $300 more than they paid for the graphics card they replaced. So essentially, everybody who bought a graphics card, let's say Pascal or Turing, they're spending more money this generation on average. And that average comes out to being $300 more, whereas honestly, that means some people are spending infinitely more than that. Many people are willing and able to pay over the odds for new graphics cards, but Fisher revealed an interesting statistic. Only 29% of the company's gamer base has made the upgrade to RTX, and the rest are still using GTX. So the guys over here at TechSpot jumped over to Steam Hardware Survey to try to back up NVIDIA's internal numbers, and it seems, according to the Steam Hardware Survey, that it's pretty close. So the 29% number that NVIDIA is saying actually seems to be representative. So not a BS number. All right, so like I said, this is two big things for us to unpack. First, this is letting us know what we already know. A lot of PC gamers are willing to spend a lot more money than they used to. That's a thing. That's why next generation, I'm like $2,000, $3,000, maybe even $4,000 cards are gonna be a thing. It sucks. If you wanna be a high-end PC gamer, you're going to have to spend 5 to 10 grand on a PC. Just is what it is. That's where things are moving. Now, here's the good news. There is good news here. I know I just laid out some bad news. The good news is you don't need to be a high-end PC gamer. I'm sorry. I know you might have always been a top-tier gamer your whole life, but realistically, 10 years ago, if you were a top-end gamer, you're spending $500 on a graphics card. So it's not exactly apples to apples, now is it? But the majority of people are not buying into this. This is the good news. So the overwhelming majority of NVIDIA GeForce users are sticking with either older cards, or the most recent cards they're buying are like the GTX 1660s or the 1650 class, which are still being sold here today. And I actually think on laptop, the 1650 is the most popular graphics card on the planet, even here today. Probably next to something like a 3050. That's the other thing I wanted to mention. A lot of people were going in the comment section on that article were saying, well, $300 over, that seems a little low to me. You have to take into account that laptop prices have not gone up at all. Not really anyway. So like a 3060 laptop is virtually the same price as a 2060 laptop. So that's actually suppressing it. On the desktop side, I would argue people are probably spending $500, $600, $700 more on average than they did last generation if you take out laptop numbers, because it's NVIDIA. They're going to take all their graphics card sales, all their GeForce users, and lump them into one category, I would assume. So people are probably spending a lot more there. But like I said, the majority of people are just not buying it. People are not buying into the hype. You don't need the ray tracings. And this is really just proof that the divide between PC gamers that I've been talking about for a while, it's a real thing. You're just going to have the ultra elite people. They're just going to go to the stratosphere. They're going to spend money, more money than you spend on your car for graphics cards in the not too distant future. And that's just the way it is. So if you're one of those people like, I need the best because reasons, Well, unless you get a second or a third job, more than likely, that's not going to be for you. So that's going to push you into the other category. So even if you bought something like a 1080 Ti, you're in the cheapo category now. Sorry, $700 graphics cards, that's the way that that's going to go. We also got information that from Colette Crest that they're going to be selling RTX 30 series with 40 series. I don't know why this is surprising anybody. What's going to happen is they're going to launch the high-end stuff, and then they're going to probably reduce the 30 series prices a little bit on the 104 dies on down. They're going to get rid of the 102 dies. They're not going to sell those any cheaper. What they'll do is they'll sell you like 3070s for maybe $450 or something, and 3060s for maybe $299. You know, they'll just lower them a little bit, make them a little bit more enticing. So the average PC gamer, somebody who used to buy like a 1060 or a 1070, you're probably going to be pushed back a generation, while the super enthusiasts out there with more money than sense, they will be the ones buying the latest and greatest technology. At best, you're going to get a slight price reduction, which isn't bad. I mean, saving money is great, especially if you don't need the upgrade right now, and let's say those cards will perform for you. So this is, it's kind of a good news. It just means that there's 71% of gamers still have some common sense and are not spending insane money, but it means about a third of the gaming community, you know, just rounding up there. They, however, are spending ridiculous amounts of money, and each category is going to need to be catered to differently. So, yeah, I mean, there's going to be competition from Intel, AMD, and whoever, so the mainstream market is still going to need to be satisfied. What this ultimately says to me is we need more competition in there. We need more and more and more companies making graphics cards, high-performance graphics cards, to compete, to keep prices down. Because without more competition, real competition out there, Nvidia is just going to continue to push the envelope to the moon. And I believe AMD is going to do the same thing. They did it with their 6000 series. They didn't even bat an eyelash at it. The second they were competitive at the high end, they matched Nvidia for the most part on price point. So I expect next generation, if AMD does win, they may even sell for more than Nvidia. And that's just not a great sign. Now, they could go the other way and sell for much less and become the better option, just offer such a massive performance increase over what Nvidia offers, dollar for dollar, that you'd be stupid not to buy it. That would be my recommendation, and hopefully AMD goes that route. I know Intel is going to have to go that route to get market share. So, yeah, I think 3 is good, but if we had 4, 5, or 10 GPU manufacturers for gaming, that would be absolutely great. Trouble is, there's not a big interest out there for people to do it, but the further Nvidia pushes up the top end and the price points and keeps the mainstream gamer behind, like let's say you're delayed for 2 years on the mainstream, and then maybe in the future that becomes 4 years or 6 years or whatever, that just makes it easier for more people to enter the market. So if Nvidia tries to capitalize any further, it's not going to work out long-term. Somebody else will step in. So I'm actually okay with that. Let Nvidia take that 29% and just give the other 71% of their market share away to other companies that actually want to give products to people at reasonable prices. So I'm pretty positive on that one, but I want to hear your thoughts on that one down below. All right, so just keeping with the Nvidia news real quick. This happened this week. Nvidia announces the H100 Hopper GPU with 1680-896 FP32 cores, 80 gigs of HBM3 memory, and 700 watts TDP. So this isn't that big of a deal. If you haven't seen our podcast from, I think it was like 2 or 3 days ago, from Paul and I, we talked about this. Basically, what these numbers indicate is the leaks that we've gotten recently about AD102 are likely true. We should see a 2x performance increase on their gaming cards looking at the information and data we have here. So obviously this is not a chip that you're going to be buying unless you want to spend like 20, 30 grand on something. Like I said, somebody probably will, but I don't even think these things have display outputs. Regardless, all this did is let us know that they're using TSMC N4, which is very interesting, versus N5, which will likely be for Lovelace. And it also gives us kind of a glimpse at what their budget for transistors and die sizes and things like that. Like I said, all it does is tell me that essentially we'll be getting what the leaks were saying, or at least pretty close to it. In far more interesting news than Hopper, CD Projekt Red announces a new Witcher game to feature Unreal Engine 5. Now, this is going to be a big deal. So, we all suspect this. Obviously, we don't have definitive evidence, but a lot of the reasons why Cyberpunk was such a pain in the butt was they were using their in-house Red engine, and, well, when you have your own engine, it's a bit of a pain. Unreal Engine 5 is meant for large-scale open worlds, and it's super easy to use. If you guys haven't seen their demo with the Matrix thing, where they break everything down, you should absolutely check that out, because it will make development for this game much, much faster. If CDPR needs some help, needs some feedback or something, they can reach out to a whole other team that it's their job to just make that thing work. So I think we might actually see this game a lot faster than if they were using their own in-house engine. And honestly, I'm just excited that they're still continuing with the Witcher games. Remember when Witcher 3 came out, they kind of said they were done. Looks like their lust for money has pushed them in another direction, but I think most people are okay with that. This likely won't be out for at least 3 to 5 years, I would say. So a lot of people getting excited. They're like, hey, I got to buy a 4090 Ti to play the new Witcher game. You'll have a 5,000 or 6,000 GeForce series out by then. So I wouldn't really be too concerned about trying to buy for these games yet, but I'm very interested to see how this turns out. And I think that this is a bit of good news here. Now, switching back to the bad news, AMD Ryzen 7 5800X 3D is 9% faster than the 5800X in a leaked Geekbench multi-core test. So I know a lot of you guys are jumping for that keyboard. Oh, it's Geekbench, it's crap. Yes, I agree. But the fact that it's 9% faster just isn't good. I mean, not considering what we were expecting with the claims of up to 15%. Realistically, 9, 10, maybe even 8% was always going to be the thing. And this just tells me that this is probably what you're going to get. I mean, reading right here, AMD Ryzen 7 5800X 3D, it's actually slower than a 5800X in single core because the cache doesn't matter because you still have 32 megs of cache for a single core on the 5800X. So for games that are lightly threaded, yeah, the clock speed's more important. And then you just have your 9% multi-core test, which that's not going to scale for gaming, guys. Not in most games. Most games still only use 1, 2 cores super heavy, and then it'll use up to about 8 to 16 threads, but they're very, very light. So I would say possibly even as low as 5% in a lot of games, especially DirectX 11 games, which are mostly single-threaded. I just wouldn't be expecting much out of the 5800X 3D, but after seeing this, I think it has a chance at losing to a 12900K and losing badly to a 12900KS. So if you're a super enthusiast, you might want to skip this one. Now back to good news. AMD Fidelity FX Super Resolution 2.0 takes less than 3 days to implement for DLSS games. GeForce 10, 20, 30 series GPUs are supported. So we expect Polaris, Vega, and all that from the AMD side to also be supported, which would make sense. So the GeForce cards of the same eras will be supported. Now, to me, this is great. This is basically eliminates the DLSS advantage because any game that uses DLSS could very quickly implement this in, and that means AMD, Intel owners, and anybody not using an RTX card, which according to Nvidia's 71% of their own customers can now get a nice upscaling technique. Now, they explain why it would be much easier in DLSS games. It's not just DLSS games, but you know for a fact that it would happen in DLSS games because of AMD also mentions that NVIDIA's DLSS 2.0 in their post, according to the company, the integration for DLSS-enabled games will be the quickest, taking less than 3 days. Only games that have no decoupled display / render resolutions or motion vectors will require weeks of work to enable FSR 2.0. So basically, the groundwork is already laid in DLSS games. Now, other games, obviously, it would be like implementing DLSS from the ground up. So that's the reason why it's going to be much easier, just because it's already pretty much primed and ready to go. Now, real quick, I did touch on it just a minute ago, but I really want to hammer this home. According to Nvidia, FSR 2.0 is better for 71% of their own business, their own customer base. That is absolutely hilarious. See, that's why I love getting these data points directly from these companies, because you can go, well, they said it, and we can hold them accountable to these, whether they're true or not. I mean, it's not a flattering number, so I would assume that it is true, and probably slipped out, to be perfectly honest with you. So FSR 2.0, for anybody out there that's like, it's not a big deal, I'll just use DLSS. Well, you're in the super minority if you have the ability to use DLSS. So that's why this is a big deal. That's why XESS is going to be such a big deal. I think XESS was a DP4. I forgot what it is that they require, the instruction set. I believe that's RDNA 1 on up and probably Turing on up. I'm not 100% sure on that one, but it'll be more limiting than FSR 2.0. That's my point. So like things like Vega and Polaris might be left out, and the 10 series may also be left out. Meaning FSR 2.0, even if visually is worse than XESS and DLSS, it's still going to be the best option for a lot of people out there. And as Nvidia has mentioned, a lot of people just aren't upgrading. They're just not, because prices are getting stupid, which they also mentioned. So FSR 2.0 is going to be the thing that helps millions upon millions of gamers out there. So let's all go ahead and hope that AMD hits it out of the park here and game developers really support it. I'm very interested to see how this all turns out. I know a couple of guys out there got their hands on something. I haven't looked at it yet. I'm sorry. We'll talk about it more on tomorrow's Techonomics podcast. So make sure you go ahead and click the link down below, subscribe over there. But this is going to be the biggest upscaling technology that there is, period, because of its wide availability on different GPUs, in my opinion. So next up, we just have another cool implementation of new technology. Luminous Productions showcase Microsoft DirectStorage in Forspoken demo. So this is a game that's in development. It's coming out later on this year, October 11th, later this year, and it is using the new DirectStorage API. For PC, of course. Obviously, this has been on Xbox. But what it does is it makes every single device, storage device out there faster. And it even supports mechanical hard drives. So no matter what device you're using, this will speed up your game. So what's really nice about this technology is it's a free upgrade for load times, regardless of your storage device. And the most important part is we're seeing games later this year starting to come out with that. So that means we're not too far off from getting this, and I would assume all games, or the majority of games thereafter, should also be implementing this, especially if they're making an Xbox Series version, because why not? You're using it for that, just port it over. So cool, loading time should be going down, guys, and you don't have to do nothing for it. I think that's a good thing. And then our final story of the day is AMD Ryzen 7000 Zen 4 Raphael desktop 170 watt SKU, rumored to feature 16 cores. So the 16 core thing, the article makes it sound like, ooh, their flagships only got 16 cores again. We've known this forever. The big news here is 170 watts, that's a real thing. That got leaked out a while ago, and I personally was like, yeah, that's never gonna happen. Well, AMD is definitely worried about Intel. That is what that says to me. And they're going to push to the moon, because why not? We're going to have, what, 4, 5, 800 watt graphics cards. You know, you can't have like a 100 watt CPU. That just doesn't, you know, it feels a little left out. So this comes from Greymon 55, where they have the 170 watt 16 core 32 thread and a 105 watt 12 core 24 thread. So according to this, it says AMD is currently not planning a 120 watt Ryzen 7000 SKU. I bet they will. I'm betting there will be another 16 core 12 thread that's within efficiency curves, and that should be probably around the 120 watt range, but there's just no information about that yet. The top SKU is supposedly launching at 170 watts, will require, this is the interesting part, will require liquid cooling, not that big of an issue, with at least a 280 millimeter radiator. As most people have 240 millimeter radiators, we're going to have to see if that's true. I'm guessing if you're using a cheaper 240, that's not going to work. And they're assuming a cheap 280. So if you have a good 240, you're probably fine. I find it a little strange that you can easily do a Fury X at 300 watts with a single 120 millimeter rad, but for 170 watt CPU, you need a 280mm. That just seems a little strange to me. So tying everything together to that earlier article, apparently everybody knows all of Nvidia's secrets. They flat out said everybody knows their stuff. One could assume that AMD knows all of Intel's stuff as well. Might as well, you know, if one of these guys knows one of them, you know, they probably know everything, right? So to even waste their time coming out with a 170 watt, I know I was being sarcastic about GPUs and CPUs getting, you know, TDP envy of that. Maybe that's part of it. They just said, screw it. People are buying 1500, 1600 watt power supplies. The hell with it. Theoretically, that could be it, but more likely, AMD knows something that we don't. I personally don't think it's Raptor Lake. Raptor Lake doesn't seem like it's going to be that big of a threat, but perhaps it is, especially on multi-core. So with the 16 E-cores and the 8 big cores, perhaps that could beat a just stock standard 16 core, and perhaps that's it. Or maybe the leaked roadmaps for Intel coming out with Meteor Lake early next year. It's theoretically possible that AMD believe them and understand that Meteor Lake is going to be a whole nother animal compared to Alder Lake and Raptor Lake. So we'll just have to wait and see, but no matter what, if this is true, once again, this is a leak, but we heard it last year and it's getting reinforced again. Make no mistake, if this does come out at that 170 watts, Intel is the only reason why it exists. And that means we should start looking at Intel as maybe not just being, you know, writing them off going, yeah, Raptor Lake's going to be a joke or whatever. Apparently, AMD does not think so. So yeah, that's definitely more interesting news to me. Is not so much about what AMD's doing. That's more of a desperation move, much like the 12900K doing 250 watts. That was a desperation move, let's be honest. Now that you see AMD doing it, they're getting worried. So that's good. We have some serious competition on the CPU side. These guys are pushing it to the limits. The nice thing is that means that new flagship SKU will push down the prices on the other SKUs, hopefully. Or AMD could just be like, no, this is our new $1,000 mainstream CPU, and then keep the normal price structure. Hopefully that's not the case. Hopefully we just see it push prices down. That would be great. That's the best case scenario, in my opinion. Now let's talk about today's good old game of the day. And today's good old game of the day is none other than The Elder Scrolls 3 Morrowind. It's on sale right now for only $4.49 over here on GOG. Links are down below if you want to check it out. To me, Morrowind is by far superior to Skyrim and Oblivion in virtually every way, except for gameplay. And I guess you could say graphics, but the graphics aren't that great in either one. Morrowind allows you much more freedom than you have in the more modern Elder Scrolls games. You can literally go around and steal items, like end game level items at level 1. A buddy of mine and I did that. We virtually beat the game without leveling up once. And we did it through save scumming. I'm not going to tell you otherwise. We definitely save scum the crap out of it, but that's something that you can do in this game. You have a lot more freedom. If you want an open world sort of Elder Scrolls-like experience and you've only played Oblivion and Skyrim and you wanted more freedom, play this game. You will need to get over the jank. This is a very janky game. The combat is not how you would expect. It's not intuitive at all. But if you can get past that, basically if you can beat the first dungeon or two, you'll start to figure it out. And you will have more fun with this game than you probably will in the vast majority of games ever produced. Go figure, right? You got to get over the jank to enjoy a Bethesda game. Yeah, surprise, surprise. That's kind of always been the case. But yeah, if you haven't played Morrowind, you absolutely should. It's one of those things like you'll have to sit down, kind of grit your teeth and be like, why doesn't this work? And if you're a member or a patron, make sure you hit me up on Discord because I guarantee you're going to be like, why can't I hit this thing with my weapon? Because that's not, unfortunately, that's not how the game works. Like I said, it's not intuitive at all. I'll be more than happy to help you out. So if you do want to support the channel, you can go ahead and click the little join button down below. Go ahead and click the Patreon link if that's the way you want to go. It gets you access to a bunch of stuff, like asking me things like, how the hell do I play Morrowind? Once you figure that out, trust me, it's a whole different ballgame. That's how video games used to be. You used to like have to read the manual, like an actual book before you played it to even know what you were doing. That was kind of towards the end of that era. And luckily, the newer games are much more accessible, but they stripped out a lot of the really cool stuff. But anyways, if you want to be able to ask me questions like that, That's how you do it. You hit the little join button. Somebody actually joined up and didn't even realize I had a Discord. Yes, you get Discord access if you do that, and you get to ask questions from Paul, myself, and whoever we have on the Techonomics podcast, which we do twice a week. If you haven't subscribed to that, make sure you click the link down below. We will be going live tomorrow. And yeah, we got a lot to talk about. This was a very long and big video. Paul and I are going to have a lot to chew on tomorrow. I don't think we have a guest on tomorrow, but you never know. Sometimes people just show up. So make sure you join. I look forward to seeing you guys there, chatting with you guys live, or chatting with you in my Discord channel. But that's really all I have for you guys here today. Hope you have a great weekend. I'll catch you guys in the next video.